So, in case you didn't already know this about me, I really like Star Wars. So I figured, why not come back to the channel that I said I was going to upload on regularly and then, as always, didn't, to talk about Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Because in 2023 so far, there's not exactly been that many big game releases that I've personally been that interested in, bar, as you've seen previous in this channel, Forspoken. So one game that I was really excited for, but tentatively so, because I actually hadn't played the first one until a few days ago, it was Jedi Survivor, because I adore Star Wars. I love everything in the Star Wars universe, and there's a lot of people who have differing opinions on the films, and I do really want to do a video just talking about my opinions on Star Wars as a whole, my history with it, that kind of thing. I will do that. I was planning on doing it literally like a year ago, but I'll get there eventually. So basically in about 6 years, going by this channel standards. So what I basically did was I pre-ordered Jedi Survivor about 4 days before it came out, and that motivated me to play the first game ready in time for the second one to come out. So I've got quite a big Jedi game brain right now, and I want to kind of spew some of my thoughts out on here, just generally about what I think of Jedi Survivor. So just to go right off the bat and give it a score out of 10 to kind of set a precedent for how I feel about this game, I'm going to give it either an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. I think it's that strong. I genuinely really enjoyed my time with this. There's going to be a spoiler section towards the end of the video. You can see that in the chapter markers, so if you want to hear me talk about spoilers, it'll be limited to that bit. So anyone who's not played the game, it's literally been out for less than a week, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't just kind of drop spoilers randomly, so you won't see any of those until we get to that section. But I want to start by talking about the story and how it connects to the first games. It kind of allows me to touch on Jedi Fallen Order briefly, where I'll say that Jedi Fallen Order, despite being a lot of people's one of, if not favourite Star Wars game of all time, didn't really do tons for me. I had a good time with it. I really like the characters. Cal and Merrin in particular are my two favourites. Really like Seer, really like Grease. Grease is like a little rogue that I just love, who's kind of like the honourable mention, I suppose, as to how I feel about the characters in the games. But the story was fine. I don't think there was anything bad about it, but I just don't feel like it kept me super duper hooked. I was playing it because I knew I had the new one coming out, rather than playing it because, oh wow, this story's really good, I want to see where it goes. Granted, I did know at the end of the first game Darth Vader was going to show up. I had a couple of ideas of some plot bits, and maybe that ruined it a bit for me, but that didn't happen with Last of Us 2. I knew exactly what happened in that game. When I played through it, I absolutely loved it. So I wasn't that hooked on Fallen Order. I gave it about 6, 6.5 out of 10 because I really enjoyed a lot of the world building. Like I said, I liked the characters and I really liked the lightsaber combat. It just felt a bit off. The movement was a bit clunky. The graphic quality wasn't like amazing. There was a lot of texture pop-in issues that just seemed to be quite bad, especially on the Series X version, so I don't know what was going on there, but overall didn't mind it. But going into Jedi Survivor, I thought, right, what I want is a story that hooks me just that little bit more. Because the idea of, dodging the Inquisitors and chasing down a holocron was cool, but I didn't feel like it was enough for a full game. Personally, didn't grab me enough. However, having a High Republic Jedi come back, who's been kind of like frozen in time in a very Fallout 4-esque thing, waking up in a new world, dealing with Cal, and then all the other calamity that ensues from there that I won't get into, was far better. It hooked me almost immediately. Really, really enjoyed the story. It was a little jarring that there was a 5-year time jump, I'll say that much, because apparently there's a book in between the two games called Battle Scars. It's how Grease ends up with a missing arm. He's got like a robot arm. I thought I was going to see that in the game. So the time jump was a bit jarring, but Cal has evolved as a character so much that a story that's a little bit deeper and more layered in the way that Jedi Survivor is, that kind of goes into more Star Wars-y lore things, I guess. It works. He carries that story really, really well, as do the other characters in the game. I think there's some really, really interesting stuff going on here, and the plot didn't bore me or have me thinking, is this going anywhere? Not that I'm saying the first one bored me. I'm trying to dance around it and try and be positive about it because, like I said, it was fine. But this one just hooked me. There was something about it that just got me immediately that I really, really liked. And it kept going right the way through the game. I mean, at the minute, I really struggle to find free time to play games. I just don't have a lot of time for that kind of thing. But I still managed to beat this in 2 or 3 days because I wanted to give it that much time. That was a sign of me literally giving up every moment of free time I had to beat this game because I was really that hooked on it. So, story-wise, really, really liked it. It was a bit predictable. There was one big twist that happened that I predicted from the very start. I will not go into it until the spoilers section, because I was kind of like, I wonder if this is going to happen, and I was right. So there is that, but being able to predict a story doesn't necessarily make it bad, and I don't think it did here. I think it worked really, really well. Plus, my prediction was only part of it, so beautiful. Really, really, really good stuff there. So story, very, very strong. And the characters, again, Cal and Merrin, standouts. As in the first game, standouts here as well. I love the kind of relationship those two are building. They're just such good friends, and the way they interact with each other, and they've built on their kind of Survivors We Adapt storyline from the first game and how Merrin's gone around, travelled a bit, to kind of make her a bit more knowledgeable, a bit more worldly wise than just living on Dathomir with all of her sisters who've now died. And when you juxtapose that with Cal, who spent 5 years on the run but actually fighting the Empire rather than running and hiding, assembling a crew to take on the Empire, working with Saul Guerrera, who interestingly is mentioned at the start of the game that Cal's been working with him, but never shows up in this game. Really expected him to pop up. I love Forrest Whitaker, so I would have liked to have seen him turn up, but he didn't, so oh well. But as well, Seer and Grease all got really, really cool story updates to them. I really like where Seer went. I love where Grease went, owning a saloon. That was just such a cool idea. It's so funny that it's gone from him saying, grab some seat, and me going, that's the worst English I've ever heard, to him saying, grab some seat, and me going, he said the thing! He said the thing! I love the characters. They're really good. I think every single one is elevated from the previous game. They have good motivations that make sense, that work really well. But then you've also got new characters coming in, like the High Republic Jedi Dagan Gera. I think that's how you say it. He was a really interesting character. There were some flashback sequences, without spoiling it, to other High Republic characters that kind of give you a bit more of a perspective on that era, which was set 200 years before the events of this game, and it's an era of Star Wars that has remained relatively untouched until recent years, where you've got comics and graphic novels and books and things that are trying to explore it a bit more. We still haven't touched on it too much, but I know there's more that they're planning to do with that, which is good. It's nice that there's eras of Star Wars that we haven't seen much of that we get to dive into. The Old Republic's had the old games that were like, are they not canon, which I haven't played. Eventually I will get to them. I really do want to play those. I was waiting for the remake of Knights of the Old Republic, but with that being indefinitely delayed, I may just dive into the original anyway. But having an era of Star Wars like the High Republic, where you're basically learning whole new things about an era where the Jedi were at their absolute peak, where there was, like, peace in inverted commas, there were loads and loads of Jedi, there wasn't someone trying to undermine them and overtake them from within the way Palpatine was. It was just high society, and everyone valued the Jedi code, the Jedi religion. It's a beautiful thing to see that, and it's so well juxtaposed. I love that word today, clearly, but it's so well juxtaposed with the current era of Star Wars that the game's set in, where even Dagon's saying things like, how has the Jedi fallen to an empire that's this incompetent kind of thing? Like, he's making these comments, and you're like, yeah, it's so weird to see how the eras have changed, and I love that. But you also have other characters that I'm not going to get into, some new people who are more side characters. There's also some enemy characters that are kind of new. But the big new addition was Bode, who was a new supporting companion, the latest guy to come onto the Mantis. It made sense to get someone else new so you could have new characters reflecting with old. Really like Bode. Really, really interesting character. Right from the start, you kind of get the impression this is the guy you're going to want to root for, because there are some new characters at the start of the game and there's only one that gets more time, and that's Bode. You're like, well, we'll spend more time with him. Lo and behold, we did. But I liked him. Really good character, kind of meshed in well and had good chemistry with Cal in particular, because they were supposed to be people who were kind of, on the road more together. He just joined Cal's gang, but they hit it off well. There was good chemistry there. So he was a really interesting guy. But overall, just a lot of really cool, very consistent characters. And I will say this, minor spoilers, but not really. Eno Cordova was actually there in person, not via hologram. It was nice to see him pop up in this game. That was cool. I won't say to what capacity or where, because it's not a minor spoiler unless I go into details, but it was nice to get him there, that just not constantly talking about the Zepho. So that was nice. I really enjoyed that. I also want to talk about the locations a little bit, because this is one tiny little gripe I have with the game. I read several reviews that talked about Jedi Survivor being a planet-hopping game, and that is true. You bounce between locations a lot in the story. My only slightly negative thing is that you're pretty much bouncing between 2 or 3 locations constantly. You have the hub world, which is Kobo, where nearly every side mission is located, loads of the puzzles. It's a great world. I love it. You've got the kind of secondary world, which is Jeddah, which has some other story tie-ins, but you're going there quite a lot. And you've got Kobo's moon, the Shattered Moon. Those 3 locations are the most common. You go to Coruscant, but not for very long, and there is another location in the story which I won't spoil for plot reasons. But beyond that, that's pretty much it. There's another one that has a brief cameo in the story, but overall it's really bouncing between Kobo, Jeddah, and the moon. It doesn't feel as planet hopping, because you're basically going right here, back to here, back to here, back to here. You're kind of springing back and forth, which worked. I just would have liked a couple more planets. Not necessarily ones I knew. Would have been cool to go to other planets that I'd seen before, but I'm not bothered that we didn't go to things that I couldn't Leonardo point at. More just that there weren't enough planets for me to go, ooh, we're really bouncing around the galaxy here. You get to the holotable at the end of the game and there's like 6 locations, and you're like, I feel like I've spent too much time in like 4 of these already, so, But what they actually provided in the world, all really, really good. Some really cool, different zones, really fun to explore. And I kind of like the semi-open world strategy. It's much better, I think, in a lot of games than just going, this is open world. We've got exploration. You can take your time, you can dodge loads of stuff if you want to, but you can explore the world and pick up extra collectibles, that kind of thing, if you want. The semi-open world structure, I think, is getting more popular. It's less demanding, I feel like, for developers. Still a lot to develop, but it's not as strenuous as building a full open world. And I think in a lot of games it works better. When you have that more confined box to fit in, it actually flows better for games, especially like Jedi Survivor. And the other thing I want to talk about is the combat before I get into a little bit of my nitpicks and also the spoilers. The combat is very Dark Souls-like, is what's what I hear from a lot of people. I have not personally played very much of the Souls games. They are known for being very challenging, and I'm not a fan of very challenging games. I play nearly all my games on story mode, not because I'm terrible at games, but because I just enjoy soaking in the narrative. I'm a big story-based person, like my favourite games, Mass Effect, Life is Strange, Telltale games. I love absorbing in stories that way. I get roped in on them. But for Jedi Survivor in particular, the reason I play on story mode, because I would play on a couple difficulties higher maybe, is that I want lightsabers to feel how they look in the movies, where you swing it and someone's dead. Maybe you hit them twice to kill them, depending on the armor, but lightsabers, they're meant to be giant welding cutters that will just slice someone in half, job done. It shouldn't feel like a sword fight. I have nothing against the game for doing that. It's an interesting way to do lightsaber combat. Loads of people love it. I just don't personally. So I really liked having it low difficulty and cutting through people. You start to parry and things like that, and I think the combat system worked really well. Felt a bit more responsive and a bit better flowing than the first game, I feel like. The only downside was the bosses, because since I had it on story mode difficulty, they still wanted the bosses to feel tougher, so it kind of felt like the bosses were in their own mini difficulty, where they weren't really that easy to fight. You still had to parry and dodge them, but once I hit them a few times, like if I built up a good chain, they died pretty much instantly. So I kind of wish the bosses had been that little bit harder. They leaned into that a bit more even for story mode, and it just made it so that the lackeys were the one-hits and the bosses were still really intense fights. If they could do something like that where you could change the difficulty for certain types of enemies, I'd be all over that. Of course, there was one boss where they got it just right. I guess tiny plot spoilers here, but not enough to ruin it for you. Here's my favourite boss from Star Wars Jedi Survivor. But the last thing I want to get into before we talk about spoilers is the performance, because that has been a point of contention for everybody playing Star Wars Jedi Survivor in the last week. There are a lot of people who have either not been able to play it very well, or have just heard a lot of people not being able to play it very well. It's one of the two camps. You either have the problems, or you know of the problems and know people who've suffered them. PC in particular. For me personally, I was playing on the Xbox Series X, so I didn't have a lot of the PC-based issues. My biggest thing was I noticed frame rate drops from time to time, especially on Kobo, but there were occasionally times where it jumped down to 3020, and I was like, this isn't good, but it was so marginal that it didn't bother me. The only thing that really kind of took me out of it a tiny bit was the loading times and subsequent texture issues with the saloon on Kobo, which is kind of like the central base of the hub world, and you can kind of build and add things to it. Very, very cool location. But you have kind of like a safe room for Cals to kind of go in very quickly and easily underneath it. But if you come up into the saloon or around the front door, you basically, when you first enter, the textures don't load properly, they're dead bright and they have to darken down, things kind of load in, and you also stood at the door for ages before that even happens. The door's open, you still get the loading issues. They weren't the best, but it was only a small thing, and it's not enough to really annoy me. So just to say, I did have performance issues, but nothing completely game-breaking where I went, this isn't a good game anymore, I can't play this, I don't care. I just sucked it up and got on with it. I've seen some really bad gameplay, and that does suck, but 90 to 95% of my game was perfect, so I'm quite happy with the performance overall. And I know that patches will hopefully help that, so on subsequent replays, it'll probably be next to perfect, if not perfect. So there's that to look forward to. Shouldn't look like that at launch, but, you know, what do we expect at this point? Every game released at least a little bit broken and gets patched in. We're all used to it, for better or worse. Okay, so finally, I want to get into some spoilers. I'm not going to talk for centuries about this. There's just some things I really want to get out that I thought were really, really cool. Gonna start off, I'm a sucker for romance. Cal and Merrin. I thought there was something there in the first game, but I thought Jedi don't really pursue relationships unless you're Anakin, or hinting at it from Obi-Wan's perspective. But I was like, maybe because the Jedi Order's fallen apart, it wouldn't matter. But they kind of weaved in this thing where Bode said to Cal, the Jedi Order's dead. You know, you don't have to detach yourself from people the way that Jedi did. Have a relationship, have fun, have a good time. And you kind of had this chemistry between Cal and Merrin. And the thing I loved about it in this game was there was chemistry there, a lot of people wanted it to go somewhere, and the game didn't wait until the last hour to fulfill it. Because so many games where there's a romance, you get people hinting and hinting and hinting, and then right at the very end, it's like, oh, by the way, we'll get together now, and then you don't see much of it. And then the next game, there's some trouble, and you don't get to see much of it then. We got a kiss from Cal and Merrin quite early on, some flirting scenes and some references, and then they got together in like the last third of the game, so there was a good bit of time for them to be an item. Star Wars is not all about romance, but it was nice to have that element in there, and for characters that I really, really like. They're my two favourite characters in the games, like I said. They've got good chemistry, and I feel like because they've had that chance to mature and both come together, they just work brilliantly. So, very, very happy with that. I predicted from the very beginning that Bode was going to turn on us. I just knew it. I messaged a couple of my friends and said, I can't tell if the developers are either trying to say, we're making Bode look sus so he's good, or he is just suspect and they're making him too nice so that he will turn on you. I couldn't decide which one. And then my friends were like, you may be reaching. It could just be that you're thinking there's something there when there's not. And I was like, maybe. But as soon as Dagan Gera died when he did, and it felt like it wasn't near the end of the story, and I checked my quest percentage was like 65%, I was like, Bode's going to turn on us, isn't he? And I just saw it coming a mile off. So like I said, it was predictable, but didn't make it bad because the thing I didn't see coming was him being a Jedi. Knowing he was going to betray us, I literally just shouted out, oh, I knew it. Like, my mum heard me downstairs and went, you all right? I was like, it's the game. It's the game. Don't worry about it. But seeing him be a Jedi, didn't expect that. So they kind of, it's almost like they knew that you might be able to guess Bo was a traitor, but the Jedi bit was probably a bit more difficult to guess. So I'm grateful for that kind of it was almost expectation subversion for making the prediction of where it would go. Love that. And I like what they did with it. I know there's going to be some people who go, oh, it's a terrible excuse. He's a father. He's looking out for his kid. That's such a cop-out. But it worked. I feel like it worked personally. Maybe upon reflection, I might think it's a little bit weaker, but I quite liked it. Thought it was a good twist, and it allowed the characters to evolve a bit further, especially giving us one more fight between Darth Vader and Seer, which was one of the peaks of the game, and I was so upset when Seer died. Didn't get me. What got me was Grease's reaction to Seer being dead. That made me cry, because like I said, Seer wasn't my favourite, liked her, but Cal, Merrin, and Grease are my top three. It was Grease's reaction to seeing Seer being dead that just broke me. So, some really cool elements in here, but just wanted to say that I predicted Bode. Loved Dagan Gera turning into a villain almost immediately. They didn't build that up mainly because they had a villain twist later on. Really like the idea of a High Republic Jedi that kind of, it was meant to be a villain because he felt out of place, but then you realise it's no, because he was a villain basically before being frozen. That was why I was put in the back to tank. So I like that it was set up and then he became this really cool villain. His sidekick, Ravis, who is a Jedi. Not seen that species before. Really like the idea that they can just kind of infinitely heal themselves, cut off something and heal it back like a starfish or something. Really like that. Want to see more of those. And just overall, really, really like the story. I love the idea of going to Tanalorr, which I saw someone compare as like a light version of Exegol, which isn't quite the same thing. It's like the Jedi are building up some kind of fortress on the planet. It's just a nice safe haven. And now they've got Bode's daughter because he's dead. Very glad they killed him. I was really worried they were going to talk him down and make him just a good guy. But when Cal and Merrin was saying, we're going to try and do that on the way, I knew they were doing that because it wasn't going to go that way. So I was very glad that they set it up. But having Cal, Merrin, and Kata now for the future, I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm really excited. I just hope we get a game sooner rather than later because I am hooked now on this franchise. Before I liked it, now I'm hooked. I want to see where this goes, and I want to see it ASAP. So that's my thoughts on Star Wars Jedi Survivor. What did all of you think about it? Let me know in the comments section down below. Be very interested to get your thoughts. Overall, like I said, a few little performance issues here and there, maybe a tiny bit of predictability in the story, but I really like what they did here. They set out and improved upon every facet that made Jedi Fallen Order good for me, amazing for the people. So my general one-sentence review is, if you liked Fallen Order, you'll love Survivor. Easily done. Easily done. But that's this video done. So thank you all very much for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed it. And like I said, let me know what you think of Jedi Survivor down in the comments. If there's something about Star Wars or another game you want to hear me talk about, let me know as well. But apart from that, I'll wrap this video up here. So my name is Troy, and those are my thoughts.